You ever walk outside, ready to head to work, only to find an empty parking space where your car should have been? That gut-wrenching moment when your heart drops into your stomach? Yeah, that happened to me. Except it wasn't just a random mistake. It was deliberate. The HOA president, let's just call her Karen, had my car towed right from in front of my own house. And that was the day I decided she wasn't going to get away with it. See, I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Picture neat lawns, white fences, and people who wave when they pass. But beneath that surface lives an HOA board that thinks it runs everything. Karen, the president, is the kind of person who walks around with a clipboard, peeking into people's yards, and reminding you about rules that don't even exist. My crime? Parking my car in front of my own home. Something that's perfectly allowed according to the HOA bylaws. The night before, I had parked my sedan on the street because my garage was full of tools and boxes. I was reorganizing. By morning, my car was gone. At first, I thought it was stolen. I called the police, filed a report, and that's when the officer informed me it had been towed, authorized by the HOA president herself. I was fuming. Not only did I have to pay over $300 to get my car back, but Karen was smirking when I confronted her. She actually said, if you people followed the rules, you wouldn't have to deal with consequences. You people. Like she was some queen and the rest of us were her subjects. But here's the thing, Karen had made a huge mistake. She thought I'd roll over and let it slide. But I wasn't about to let someone bully me on my own street. That tow wasn't just about my car. It was about control. And if Karen wanted a power struggle, she had picked the wrong neighbor. So I started digging. I pulled out the HOA handbook, flipped through every page, and highlighted the sections about parking. Clear as day. Street parking was permitted unless it blocked driveways or fire hydrants. My car had done neither. Karen had overstepped, and now I had proof. That night, as I sat at my desk staring at the glowing HOA bylaws, a plan started forming in my head. I wasn't just going to get even. I was going to make her regret ever messing with me, and I was going to do it in a way that the entire street would never forget. I went to bed that night with adrenaline still buzzing. The more I reread the bylaws, the angrier I became, not just at Karen, but at the idea that someone could weaponize rules to humiliate a neighbor. This wasn't going to be petty revenge. If I was going to make a scene, it had to be clean, clever, and undeniable. No yelling, no vandalism, no stooping to the same level. I wanted everyone to see the truth and judge for themselves. First step, evidence. I printed the relevant pages of the HOA bylaws and highlighted the passage that explicitly permitted street parking. Next, I called several neighbors, not to rant, but to ask if they'd noticed anything the morning my car disappeared. Mrs. Alvarez, across the street, said she'd seen the tow truck and Karen pacing with a phone, arguing about unauthorized parking. Mr. Jenkins next door mentioned Karen had once warned him about exceptions. I decided to go public, but carefully. I made a flyer, a clean, factual layout with the bold headline, "Know Your Rights, HOA Parking Rules." Underneath, I pasted the scanned bylaw excerpt, my contact info, and a short note. If this happened to you, call me. No name-calling, no accusations, just facts. Then I made copies, slipped them into mailboxes, taped one to the community board, and posted a digital version on the neighborhood Facebook group. The reactions were immediate. Comments, private messages, and supportive DMs. Several neighbors reached out, sharing similar stories or offering to testify. A few even sent photos of other questionable tows. It felt like the first small crack in her armor, and I planned to widen it publicly. But I wanted a moment that would stick. A public, undeniable demonstration of Karen's overreach. So I scheduled a community association meeting for the following Thursday. I emailed the board, invited residents, and requested parking policy be on the agenda. I didn't tell them I would present evidence. I wanted reactions to be organic. The night before the meeting, I practiced. I rehearsed calmly, pointing to the bylaw, explaining how the tow violated it, and asking for reimbursement of my towing fees. I also prepared a visual, a short slideshow with timestamps, the tow company's receipt, and photos of where my car had been parked. No theatrics, just a tidy, professional presentation that made it hard for anyone to claim ignorance. When Thursday arrived, I felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about accountability, and about reminding everyone in our tidy, little neighborhood that rules are for fairness, not for flexing power. I was ready. Thursday night, the community center was buzzing. Normally, HOA meetings were dull affairs, budget updates, landscaping proposals, and endless debates over mailbox paint. But this time, people showed up in droves. Neighbors who hadn't attended in years filled the seats, curious about the flyer and eager to see what I had to say. And there, Sitting at the head of the table with her clipboard and smug smile was Karen. She started the meeting as usual, droning on about shrub maintenance and late fees, pretending the elephant in the room didn't exist. I sat quietly, my folder in my lap, waiting for the agenda to reach parking enforcement. When it finally did, I raised my hand. "Yes, John," she said in that syrupy, condescending tone. "Do you have something to add?" "I do," I replied, standing up. My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding. I pulled out the HOA bylaws and projected the highlighted section onto the screen. According to our official rules, street parking is permitted unless it blocks driveways or hydrants. My car did neither. Yet last week, it was towed without justification, by order of the HOA president. The room stirred. People shifted in their seats, whispering. Karen's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "That's not the full story," she stammered. "Your car was left out for multiple nights. That creates an eyesore, and as president, I have the discretion." "Actually," I interrupted, flipping another page, "the bylaws also state, street parking duration is not limited unless otherwise amended by majority vote. No such amendment exists, which means there was no violation. What happened to me was unlawful, and I have the tow receipt right here." I held it up for all to see. The whispers grew louder, some neighbors outright gasping. Mrs. Alvarez raised her hand. "Wait a second, Karen. Didn't you say my nephew's car was towed for the same reason last year?" Mr. Jenkins chimed in next. "And mine too. You said we couldn't park more than 24 hours on the street. I paid $250 for that tow." Suddenly it was no longer about me. It was about everyone Karen had targeted. Hands shot up, voices overlapped, and the calm suburban meeting spiraled into chaos. Karen tried to regain control, banging her pen on the table. "This is getting out of hand. The board supports my decisions." "Then maybe the board needs new leadership," someone muttered loudly. That sparked applause, followed by more murmurs of agreement. I let it all play out, standing silently as the tide turned against her. My plan was working. Karen wasn't just facing me anymore. She was facing the entire street, and she knew it. By the time the murmurs quieted down, Karen's face was beet red. She gripped her clipboard so tightly that her knuckles turned white. For the first time since I'd known her, she wasn't in control of the room, and she hated it. "Everyone, calm down!" she snapped, her voice higher than usual. "This meeting is not a free-for-all. I've been president of this HOA for 6 years, and everything I've done has been in the best interest of the community." That only made things worse. Mrs. Alvarez stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "Best interest? You've been bullying us! You towed my nephew's car just because he parked overnight while helping me after surgery. You never refunded me a dime." More voices piled on. A young couple in the back raised their hands, saying Karen had threatened them with fines for leaving their trash bins out too long. Older man said she had harassed him about repainting his fence, even though it matched the neighborhood guidelines. Karen's eyes darted around the room as her authority unraveled. "These are isolated incidents. I've been given discretion as president." "Wrong again," I said calmly, stepping forward with my binder. "The bylaws don't grant unilateral power to the president. Every enforcement action must be backed by written policy or majority vote. You acted alone. That's abuse of authority." The projector displayed the line as I spoke, and gasps rippled through the crowd. I didn't need to shout. The bylaws spoke for themselves. Karen slammed her clipboard on the table. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Printing out papers and turning people against me. This neighborhood would fall apart without me." That was it. She'd said the quiet part out loud. The room erupted into boos and angry shouts. For once, the community was united, not against a supposed rule breaker, but against her. The HOA vice president, a soft-spoken man named David, cleared his throat and stood. "Karen, I think it's time we reconsider your position. This board was never meant to be a monarchy. We represent the residents, and right now, they're telling us loud and clear that they're not happy." Karen's jaw dropped. She spun toward him like he'd betrayed her. "You can't do this to me. I built this HOA from the ground up." David shook his head. "You built fear and resentment. That's not leadership." It was over. Everyone in the room could feel it. Karen wasn't just losing an argument. She was losing her grip on the neighborhood she had ruled with an iron fist. And as I sat back down, letting the chaos wash over her, I knew the final blow was coming. The meeting reached a boiling point, and for once, Karen couldn't shout her way back into control. Neighbors weren't just upset, they were furious. Years of bottled-up frustration poured out like a flood, and no one was holding back anymore. David, the vice president, called the room to order. "We need to settle this formally," he said firmly. "According to our bylaws, residents can vote to remove a board member if the majority agrees. I propose we hold a vote right now." The room went quiet. Karen's mouth fell open, and she looked around as though someone might jump to her defense. But the silence spoke louder than words. "You can't do this!" she hissed. "I've dedicated my life to this HOA. Without me, everything will fall apart. You'll be begging for me back when things spiral out of control." But no one looked convinced. In fact, a few people laughed. "Let's see about that," David said. "All in favor of removing Karen as president, raise your hand." One by one, hands shot up, first cautiously, then confidently. The young couple raised theirs. Mrs. Alvarez did. 2. Mr. Jenkins raised his hand high. Then the entire back row went up. Before long, nearly every hand in the room was raised, except Karen's, of course. Her face twisted with disbelief. "You ungrateful people, after everything I've done." "Enough," David interrupted. "The vote is clear. Effective immediately, you're removed as president. You'll have no authority over enforcement decisions, finances, or community affairs." The crowd erupted in applause, and for the first time I actually saw Karen shrink. The woman who once strutted down the street with her clipboard looked small, powerless, and exposed. I stood, holding up my tow receipt one last time. And since I was towed unlawfully, I expect to be reimbursed. Not from the community's funds, but personally, by the person who authorized it. Gasps echoed again, but no one disagreed. Karen had made the call, and now she would eat the cost. She sputtered and fumed, but David nodded. "He's right. That expense is yours to cover." When I left that night, neighbors came up to shake my hand and thank me. For once, the street didn't feel divided. It felt united. Karen's reign of intimidation was finally over. And it had happened right there, in front of everyone. The next morning, I walked outside to see my car parked in the same spot it had been towed from. Only this time, it sat there proudly, untouchable, as neighbors waved to me with grins. And across the street, Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, glaring, powerless. She thought she could make me regret parking my own car. Instead, I made her regret crossing the entire neighborhood.